Ribbit, ribbit. What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, we've got another deck profile. This time, it's going to be Paleozoic Frogs. This is a deck I've liked for a long time, but had, for some reason, never really felt comfortable building. I felt like so many lists were so similar, but now stuff has changed with the deck. Like, we got Toad hit, and then nobody wanted to play the deck, and then we have Toad go from 1 to 2, so now the deck is actually something you could play if you wanted to play something a lot lower on the tier list, but it is still like a respectable strategy, especially going first. The biggest weakness of this deck, obviously, as a trap deck, is going second, but that kind of is pretty inherent at this point. Kind of all decks like that have that same kind of issue, so nothing too crazy here, but yeah. I'm really excited to do this one. I've always liked this deck, so I'm happy to finally get something out, and I think we could potentially see some future changes to this deck as well, depending on how some things go. So, starting off with our main deck, of course, monster-wise, we've got our basic simple Frog Engine 3 swap. He's the best starter. 3 dupe you need him to summon off of Toad, as well as he can be a pseudo starter to just set him with a bunch of back row, and it works. If they kill him by battle, you're going to at least get a search for swap, which is fine. And then obviously the 2 Ronin, you need this to be able to recur resources from the grave and continue to pop into totally awesome plays. So, yeah, nothing too crazy here. I wouldn't, this is like super standard. But yeah, also I do have ultras of this. I'm just, you guys know the drill. I gave him to Mike. Something happened. I didn't get him from Mike the last time I tried to get cards, and fucking, I don't know. I don't even know what happened. I forgot about him, so I have the commons, whatever. Sorry. The only other, like, legit monster I play is 1 copy of Barrier Statue of the Torrent. This is a really cool card, if you don't know. Sorry, the glare's a little weird right now. Don't love that, but yeah, it's a really cool card. If you don't know what the barrier statues do, they all just have a floodgate-esque effect that says neither player can special summon anything but their attributes, so nothing but water can be summoned. Obviously our whole deck is water, so we're not worried about that. And this can just be a nasty play, and you have ways to like float into this and like reborn it off of certain cards. So we'll get into that when we get into that. But yeah, 1 barrier statue, just a cool card. I wouldn't go full stun and play like all out on it, but it's pretty cool. And also one other thing. Oh, I guess I should mention this. I'm not maining Gizmek Uka, but that's an insanely powerful option in this deck because a lot of our meta is based around Halki-Fibrax. So you could play Gizmek Uka, which essentially just says like if your opponent special summons using like Halki-Fibrax, you're going to be able to drop the Uka on the field, which is a big body, as well as the barrier statue on your opponent's turn, even if it's their first turn, and then they will be under the water lock there. So it's a pretty cool card. If I main one, I don't even have to worry about siding in it as well as the Ukas, but I would definitely side the Ukas since I'm already playing it in the main. There, so that's pretty cool. Moving on to the I keep forgetting things. Oh, last thing I'm going to mention, I swear to God, is the last thing I'm going to mention. This is just one more water name, like one more water like monster. So it actually slightly increases the consistency of opening swap plus a water monster, which is also actually like not that bad. So yeah. That's the last thing I'm going to mention, but it is somewhat relevant because that's one of the biggest knocks on this deck is consistency-wise, you don't consistently see a strong monster play. Which then takes us to our other monsters, Effect Veiler and Ash Blossom. Just keeping it simple, we need hand traps, we need to be able to go second, and so these can hopefully keep our opponent at bay so that at least even our decent traps at going second can finish off their board and equalize the board state. Pretty simple there, though. And I only play 1 spell. It's Scapegoat. It's a really strong power play. It's for the exact reason I just talked about. You know how like you can't consistently open a monster that's reliable or something. Like you can't reliably open swap. Scapegoat kind of fills that gap as an extra card that's just a huge power play. You go first, you set this, you slow your opponent down with traps, and then you resolve this on their end phase. You will have at least a Link 4's worth of material on the field, and you can make a big power push. So yeah, it's a cool card. Definitely don't sleep on it. Oh, by the way, Konami, put this to 3, please. Just do it. Like, just do it. This card's so slow nowadays, like with how fast the game is. Like, put this to 3. I would play 3 in this deck because it would actually be like so cool. But yeah, Konami, play 3. I put it to 3. I'm telling you. And then we get to the trap lineup. So this is where most of the money is made in this these decks. It's just the huge trap lineup, okay? So 3 copies of Trap Trick, Then we have our Paleozoics, so 3 Dinomyscus, 3 Canadia, and also 3 Olenoids. Olenoids still a common, should be a super. I don't know why it's not. Put that in the next OTS pack, Konami. But this is the lineup. I know Olenoids isn't the best card in the meta at the moment, but there are still niche interactions. These decks are trying to use like Smokerny of the Time Thieves to like rip cards, so you can potentially hit those. Boral Savage likes to equip a monster, you can hit that. If they try to Buster Lock you, this can out that, so you can still go into Toad plays, whatever. It still has uses for sure. It's not the best card in the world, but it's a Dust Tornado that also ends up being a body later on, so it's pretty important. Canadia is way better now than it was prior to Master Rule 5. It's great. I mean, like, people are just ending on Synchro and Exceed monsters. They're not ending on links anymore, like full link boards. So this card got a lot better here. And then Dinomyscus. We all know how good Dinomyscus is. Obviously, I don't love the discard aspect of it, but it's fine. Oh, I might as well leave these here for while I put the rest down. And then for the rest of the normal traps, at least, we're on 3 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. I'm proxying this. This is the only card I don't have for the profile. It's gone up in price. And I'm like, how am I going to buy this when it went up in price? And I'm holding off on it. I should have bought it when it was like $5, and I didn't. That's on me. But yeah, I'll buy that later. And then Infinite Impermanence. Obviously, Impermanence paired with Ash and Veiler gives you your 9 hand trap lineup. So at least you have some decency in terms of being able to go second and open a hand trap. And then you also have the Ice Dragon's Prison. This card is insane, guys. If you're playing a trap deck or any deck that plays Trap Trick, you probably just play this card. It's so insane. If you don't know what it does, it reborns a monster to your field from your opponent's graveyard. Then, all in one like resolution, it banishes one monster from your field and your opponent's field that have the same type. So, Dragon Link. They like to end on Dragoon sometimes, or Boral Savage. Reborn any dragon from their grave, then banish the dragon you reborned and a Boral Savage, or a Dragoon. This is non-targeting, non-destruction, so that's really, really good. Versus Infernal Knight, reborn a warrior, banish 2 warriors, right? Pretty good. It's graveyard. It's like DD crowing your opponent and Dinomyscusing your opponent without targeting and without discarding anything. So it's actually insane. This is like kind of a power creep in terms of like the power level of a lot of traps that exist in the game. The only thing is it is a little bit specific. There are certain decks that don't care that much about this card, but fortunately we're in a metagame where a lot of stuff does, and I think it'll stay that way for a long time just because of how decks are designed, right? You have like archetypes with similar types all throughout. A lot of the boss monsters end up being the same type as the smaller monsters, the engine monsters, and so it becomes pretty easy to resolve that against a lot of matchups. So that's pretty cool. For the rest of the traps and the rest of the deck, at least for the main, we're on 3 Solemn Strike and 3 Gozen Match. Okay, I know what you might be thinking here. You might be going, John, no Solemn Judgment? Yeah, I think with a deck like this, I think Judgment's best served in the side deck. So 100% I would be side decking it, so don't worry, I would still be playing it, just not in the main. Here's the thing, game 1, people aren't lightning storming you. They're not Harpy's Feathered, well maybe they're Harpy's Feather Dustering you, but it's a 1-of, like you can't play a 3-of just to account for a 1-of in the format. That's not searchable. And like I guess evenly matched, but like the big thing is like you're never going to see that game 1. Very rarely, maybe like hard going second strategies you'll see it, but that's not the meta, and that's not what you should expect. You shouldn't build your deck to cover matchups you're not expecting to see on the regular. So I would side Judgment just for games 2 and 3, or whenever you know you're going first, because you need to stop those haymakers. But for game 1, I actually like Strike much more. It's way better going second. You set this and like a Gozen. You set these together. Your opponent has a full ass board, right? You flip a Gozen, your opponent will attempt to negate it because they know they'll have to send almost everything on their board to the grave if this resolves. Then when they try to use something, you then can strike in response. Now, not only destroying the monster that they tried to negate this with, but then also resolving this, because now they can't respond to this unless they had a counter trap of their own, which in the metagame right now, like, don't exist. And then they would be forced to send everything. Or you could pair with anything else. Ice Dragon's Prison, Dinomyscus, Canadia, anything that would like bait something first, Then Solemn Strike follows up to ensure it resolves and hit 2 birds with 1 stone, or even potentially more than that, and equalize the board state. So it's just way better going second. A lot of people sleep on this card going second for sure, and I like the way it pairs with a lot of other traps going second, and it's just a strong disruption going first, and then obviously goes in, like, I don't have to explain this, you're not going into a single monster other than water outside of like very, very utilitarian situations and Scapegoat, but like I get it, I'm playing Scapegoat and a 3/0 that like doesn't work with Scapegoat, but it is what it is. You can resolve them however you want. If you want to resolve Scapegoat and you didn't need Gozen, leave that Gozen. Do some link plays on your next turn with the Scapegoat tokens, and then flip this up, or flip this up and say this has to resolve now, and then you save the Scapegoat. Your opponent will probably out this at some point, and then you go for the Scapegoat. Say, oh, you wasted all this time just trying to out one card, all these resources, just out one card, and now I've got Scapegoat to just put you into the grave, right? So that is it for the main deck. 40 cards. With a deck like this, like we've brought up multiple times, when you have limited amounts of monsters and like actual engine starters, you really want to play 40 cards. And I almost played Upstart, I almost played Desires, but I just think with Trap Trick, like Desires is so bad, right? Like I didn't want to do that, but it's definitely something I would consider going forward. It still is a nice power card. Baits the Ash Blossom, baits some certain negates because they don't want you to get 2 cards for free. And then even if they don't negate it, it's a +1. But it does kind of jank up your main deck a little bit for certain situations, so I wanted to avoid that if I could. And then also you could play Upstart if you want for more consistency. But I wanted to play all the traps that I played. I wanted to play the hand traps, the barrier statue. I've just space for me was not that loose. So, but it could be for you. Depends what you personally like. Taking us to our extra deck here, though, 2 totally awesome. You got to start with this guy. He's insane. I mean, he's a boss monster that on every standby phase gets you a free special summon of a monster from your archetype. Then he's an Omni Negate, not just to negate and destroy, but to negate and steal the card you negated. Then he's thirdly a floater. If he's just sent to the graveyard, you get to add any water monster from grave back to hand. That could be loading himself back into the extra deck, so you can technically never run out of Toad. You could add a swap or something, a frog monster back from grave, maybe even barrier statue of the torrent if you wanted in certain situations, and it's just great. Like, he's an insane boss monster. Should have never gone to 1, but whatever. We are where we are, and we're glad he's just at least back at 2. Then for the rest of the Exeeds, at least the Paleozoics, were on Opabinia and Animalocaris. I know you don't go into this guy very much because he does unfortunately require 3 level 2 monsters, which is kind of brutal, but Opabinia is very good. It gets you a search. He's just a little bit defensive. That's the problem. He doesn't have any an attack stat at all, so he's a good card. He just doesn't help you push at all. At least Toad is like kind of defensive in nature, but also like is a big body, so you can still like attack with him, whereas this guy like just can't even attack to push damage on your opponent. Put them on any kind of timer whatsoever, but it is what it is. Still a good card, still got to play it. The only other Exceed I play is Sky Cavalry Centauria, at least until Negalogia AA Zeus comes out, where you definitely play him at least at 1 in this deck because it's just insane. But yeah, this card's cool. It helps you out Dragoon. That's really the only reason you play this, is it's non-targeting, non-destruction removal of a monster, so out that Dragoon if your opponent has it. And then we have some links, okay? The more generic ones that I have right here are Starboy and Coral Anemone. Keep in mind, I'd also probably try and play the Water Charmer, but I couldn't find mine, the Water Charmer link. Maybe I'd make room for it, or maybe I'd just drop Starboy. Although I kind of still like Starboy because he allows you to end on certain boards. It's like mid to late game, you can end on like Starboy double Totally Awesome, which is like they're both 2700 and they're both like not once per turn on the negate effect. So you've got double negate, both of them float. They're both summoning from deck on the standby phase, and you've got like a boost to them both, so that they're even harder to like out. And then Coral Anemone is just amazing, just to reborn a water, reborning a swap to then get his effect. It's just like nasty, like just sets you up for like to end on this Toad instead of just like Toad and like another just frog on the field, which is actually pretty good and pretty much better. Also, you can reborn barrier statue of the torrent with this, and I've done it multiple times before. It's pretty cool because you just like, I don't know, you just have like a barrier statue of the torrent and like a dupe in hand or a Ronin in hand. You just like normal the Ronin after you've gone back to your turn. Then you link them into this, special the barrier statue back, and now you've got a 2000 beater and the barrier statue. So it's pretty nasty. It's a pretty cool play. Comes up all the time. For the links, just for like Scapegoat stuff, obviously, Linkuriboh, Security Dragon, Cerberus, Phoenix, Unicorn, all just stuff you're going to use as you go up into the Link plays. Whoa, my camera is frozen right now. Is it going to jump out of that? Yeah. Oh my god, what is going on right now? Holy shiz. Alright, it's looking a little better. What's going on over here? What the heck is happening? Alright, it's a little better. Alright. So you're going to be linking up into these as you go through your scapegoat play. You start with like the Linkuriboh, that gives you 2 different names to start going into these guys. You end up with like Security Dragon pointing down, and then Cerberus to get the co-linked effect, and Phoenix to get the co-linked effect. If you just put any one more monster on the field, you get the co-linked effect, right? So you're going to at least like bounce a card, bounce a monster, and like pop a monster. Bounce a monster, pop a back row. And if you have another monster, you can do that plus a spin, and they all will be co-linked when they do it, so you're all getting the redraw off the nightmares, which is pretty good there. So that's really nice. That's just super standard for like scapegoat stuff in general. Gotta play it. And then for the boss monsters, Avermax and Boral Sword for the scapegoat boss monsters. Boral Sword is just great once you amass enough advantage via Paleozoics or frog monsters or scapegoat tokens. You're finally able to make Boral Sword get in for a game. That's all it is. Just once you have enough bodies, it just helps you push for that damage. And then Avermax, if you don't think you have enough damage on board, you'll just go Avermax to play a more defensive game. It's better than Appaloosa, because if you're making Appaloosa in this deck, you're probably only making it for 2 materials, maybe 3 materials, and that's just not as worth. Like, Avermax just straight up better in that situation. So I'd rather play Avermax. And then the last card in the deck is Mega Collapse. And I know what you're thinking is like, John, how are you putting 3 different Exceed monsters on the field? Well, when you can, it may take a couple turns, but that's not why we're playing this. I'm playing this specifically because if you're playing this deck, I think it's very smart to side something like Waking the Dragon. It's something that a lot of people sleep on and don't like realize, especially not when it's part of the metagame. They completely forget about the card, but when it resolves, it really does make their eyes pop out of their head. It's pretty crazy. So the idea there is, especially with something like Trap Trick in the deck, if your opponent sides in after game 1, they're going to side in the Lightning Storms. They're going to side in the Evenly Match isn't a good example, but Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, you know, whatever they might side, right? A Twin Twisters maybe potentially, if it ever comes back into the format. It just hasn't been that good lately. If they pop that Waking, you're getting this guy, and now you just like win. not necessarily, and you could play different things too. You could just play a single copy of Dragoon just because he's a negate that just gets bigger, and like, you know what I mean, like that's pretty good. Or you could do something like Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. You could definitely do that as well. I just don't have either of those at the moment, so I just put this in. But if I'm going to side the Waking, I would definitely place something there to punish our opponent for siding in those cards. You side in like the Judgments to stop those cards, but then you also side in the Waking to punish those cards should they resolve, and then you try and go from there. So it's pretty nasty if you can resolve it, but that is it for our Paleozoic Frog deck profile, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I really like this deck, and I haven't tried to build it in a long time because I just felt like nothing really changed for the deck all that much. But we got Ice Dragon's Prison, we got Toad back to 2, so it's like kind of exciting time for you know, Frog players to like jump back onto their favorite deck. And they did decently well in the Create a Card poll. If not for Galaxy Photon being in the vote, they might have actually had a chance at winning. But it is what it is. So that's going to do it for me here, guys. Like I said, leave some comments down below on your thoughts on the build. If you change anything, if you have any suggestions. I'm by no means a Frog professional. Like, this is not my personal deck of choice at all times, but I do like the deck and I'd like to learn more about it. So if you have some advice, definitely throw it in the comment section down below. And that is going to do it for me here today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me, specifically deck profiles, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.